She cared for her beloved garden for 30 years, until she found the letters buried beneath it that unraveled her marriage. Zara Mitchell knelt in the soft earth of her garden, her hands buried in the rich soil as she tended to the vibrant blooms that had become her sanctuary over the past 30 years. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the rows of flowers, each one a testament to her love and dedication. The garden was more than just a collection of plants. It was a reflection of her life, a place where she found solace amidst the chaos of family and responsibilities. Zara had always believed that nurturing her garden was akin to nurturing her family. Each flower represented a memory, a moment in time that she cherished. The daisies reminded her of her children's laughter during summer picnics, while the roses symbolized the love she had shared with her husband, Darius King. But as she dug her hands deeper into the soil, a sense of unease began to creep into her heart. "Zara, dinner's ready," Darius called from the back door, his voice cutting through the tranquility of the evening. "Coming," Zara replied, wiping her hands on her apron before standing up. She took a moment to admire her handiwork, the colors of the flowers vibrant against the backdrop of the setting sun. But as she turned to head inside, a glint of something caught her eye beneath the surface of the soil. Curiosity piqued. She knelt down again, brushing away the dirt to reveal a small, weathered box. "What's this?" she murmured to herself, her heart racing with anticipation. She pried the box open, revealing a collection of letters, their edges yellowed with age. As she pulled one out, her breath caught in her throat. The letter was addressed to Darius, and the handwriting was elegant, flowing with an intimacy that sent a chill down her spine. Zara's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter, her heart pounding in her chest. The words leaped off the page, each line a dagger, piercing through the facade of her seemingly perfect life. The letter spoke of love, longing, and a connection that Zara had never known existed. It was signed by a woman named Celeste. "No, this can't be happening," Zara whispered, her mind racing as she read the letter again, desperate to make sense of the betrayal unfolding before her. The letters continued, each one revealing more about Darius's infidelity, detailing secret meetings, and whispered promises that shattered the trust she had built over the years. Zara felt the ground beneath her shift as the reality of her marriage began to unravel. Darius had been unfaithful, and the garden she had lovingly cultivated had hidden this dark secret. The weight of the letters pressed down on her, and she struggled to breathe as anger and heartbreak surged within her. "Zara!" Darius called again, this time with a hint of impatience. "Are you coming or what?" Zara quickly stuffed the letters back into the box, her heart racing as she stood up. She felt as if the world around her had shifted, the vibrant colors of her garden now muted by the revelation she had just uncovered. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as she walked toward the house. Inside, the aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing in her heart. Darius stood at the kitchen counter, plating the food with a casual ease that made Zara's stomach churn. He looked up and smiled, but the warmth in his eyes felt like a lie. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone light, as if nothing was amiss. "Yeah, just lost track of time," Zara replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She felt the weight of the letters in her pocket, a constant reminder of the truth she was now grappling with. As they sat down to eat, Zara's mind raced with questions. How could Darius do this to her? How long had it been going on? And why had she been so blind to the signs? The conversation flowed around her, but Zara felt detached, as if she were watching from a distance. Darius chatted about his day at work, oblivious to the storm brewing within her. "Zara, you're awfully quiet tonight," Darius said, his brow furrowing with concern. "Everything all right?" "Just tired," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The truth was, she was exhausted. Not just from the day's work, but from the emotional weight of the letters and the realization that her marriage was built on a foundation of lies. After dinner, Zara excused herself, needing space to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. She retreated to the garden, the moonlight casting a silvery glow over the flowers. As she walked among the blooms, she felt a sense of loss wash over her. The garden had always been her refuge, but now it felt tainted by the betrayal hidden beneath its surface. Zara knelt down again, her fingers brushing against the soil where she had found the letters. She felt a surge of anger and sadness, a mix of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. How could Darius betray her like this? How could he throw away the life they had built together? As she sat there, the weight of the letters heavy in her mind, Zara realized she had a decision to make. Should she confront Darius with the truth she had uncovered, risking the fragile stability of their family? Or should she bury the truth, just as she had buried the letters, continuing to live in the facade of a happy marriage for the sake of their children? The thought of confronting Darius filled her with dread. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who kept the family together. But now, the very foundation of her life felt like it was crumbling beneath her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "Zara?" Darius's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to reality. He stood at the edge of the garden, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "What are you doing out here?" "Just thinking," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "About what?" he pressed, stepping closer. Zara hesitated, the letters burning a hole in her pocket. She could feel the truth clawing at her throat, begging to be released. But the fear of what that truth could unleash held her back. "Just the garden," she said finally, forcing a smile. "It's coming along nicely." Darius nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "It looks great. You've really outdone yourself this year." "Thanks," Zara replied, her heart heavy. She wanted to believe that their marriage could withstand this storm, but the letters loomed over her like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down chaos. As they stood together in the garden, Zara felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't keep the truth buried forever. The letters had unearthed a reality she could no longer ignore, and she would have to confront Darius eventually. But for now, she would keep the letters hidden, just as they had been buried beneath the soil. She would continue to tend to her garden, nurturing the flowers that had always brought her joy, even as the shadows of betrayal loomed over her heart. The days that followed were a blur for Zara Mitchell. Each morning she would rise early, tending to her garden before the sun fully broke over the horizon. The garden, once a place of peace and sanctuary, had transformed into a battleground of emotions, a constant reminder of the betrayal she had unearthed. Each flower she watered, and every weed she pulled, felt charged with unspoken tension. Zara had hidden the box of letters deep in the shed, shoving it behind tools and gardening supplies, as if its physical concealment could somehow mask the emotional turmoil it represented. But no matter how hard she tried to focus on the beauty of her garden, the letters hung over her like a dark cloud, suffocating her with the weight of their truth. Darius continued to act as if nothing had changed. He would come home from work, showered and smiling, eager to engage in the everyday banter they had shared for years. But Zara felt like a ghost, floating through their conversations, laughing at jokes that no longer felt funny, and responding to questions she barely heard. Each night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moments from the letters in her mind, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the stranger who had penned those words. "Zara, are you even listening?" Darius's voice broke through her reverie one evening as they sat on the couch watching television. "Sorry, what did you say?" she asked, forcing herself to focus on him. "I was just saying we should plan a weekend getaway, just the two of us," he suggested, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. Zara felt a pang of guilt wash over her. He was trying to reconnect, to rekindle their relationship, but how could she possibly agree to that knowing what she now knew? I don't know, Darius. Maybe we should focus on the kids' schedules first," she replied, her voice tight. Darius's expression faltered for a moment, confusion flickering across his face. "You're right, of course. The kids come first." He leaned back, disappointment etched in his features, and Zara felt a rush of regret. As the days turned into weeks, Zara found herself retreating deeper into her gardening. She would spend hours outside, digging, planting, and nurturing the flowers that had always brought her joy. But now, each bloom felt tainted by the betrayal that lurked beneath the surface. The garden had been her refuge, but now it served as a constant reminder of the life she had believed in, a life that had been shattered by Darius's infidelity. One afternoon, as Zara tended to the daisies, bright and cheerful in their sunny yellow, she felt a surge of determination. She could no longer live in this limbo, pretending that everything was okay when her world had been upended. The letters had given her a glimpse into a reality she could no longer ignore, and she had to confront Darius before the weight of the secret crushed her entirely. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Zara's heart raced. The tension in the air was thick, and she could feel the familiar knot in her stomach tightening. Darius casually asked about her day, but she could barely focus on his words. "Zara, are you all right?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. "I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice steady but low. The words felt heavy in her mouth, as if they were coated in lead. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Darius replied, his expression shifting to one of curiosity. Zara took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly, as she set her fork down. "I found something in the garden. A box. It had letters in it." Darius's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and apprehension crossing his face. "Letters? What do you mean? Whose letters?" Zara's heart raced as she met his gaze. "Letters addressed to you, from someone named Celeste." The room fell silent, the clinking of silverware halting as Darius's expression hardened. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. Zara felt a surge of anger and betrayal rise within her. "I'm talking about the truth, Darius. The truth about your affair. The letters detail everything. The meetings, the promises. How long were you planning to keep this from me?" Darius's face turned pale, and for a moment he seemed at a loss for words. "Zara, "Don't," Zara interrupted. her voice rising. Don't try to deny it. I read the letters, Darius. I know the truth. Okay, he said, pinching the bridge of his nose as if trying to ward off a headache. Let's just take a breath. I can explain. Explain? Zara echoed, her voice trembling with emotion. What is there to explain? You were unfaithful to me. You broke the trust we built over decades. How could you? Darius looked down at his plate, his shoulders slumping, as if the weight of the world rested on them. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake. A mistake? Zara's voice shook with disbelief. This wasn't just a fleeting moment. This was a choice, Darius. You chose to betray me. I know, and I'm sorry, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I never wanted it to come to this. Zara felt the tears prick at her eyes, a mix of anger and heartbreak swelling within her. Do you understand what you've done? I dedicated my life to this family, to this marriage, and you threw it all away for someone else. Darius looked up, vulnerability etched in his features. I was lost, Zara. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. We grew apart, and I found comfort in the wrong place. The admission hung in the air, a painful acknowledgement of the truth. Zara felt a mixture of sorrow and rage, the familiar ache of betrayal cutting deep. And you thought that was an excuse, that I wouldn't be hurt by this? I thought I could keep it separate. I thought it wouldn't affect you or the kids, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. Zara shook her head, feeling the weight of his words. You're wrong. It affects everything. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. I love you, Zara, Darius said, his voice filled with urgency. I want to fix this. I want to make it right. Love isn't enough when trust is broken, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. You can't just say you love me and expect everything to go back to normal. This isn't a fairy tale, Darius. Silence enveloped them as the reality of the situation settled in. Zara felt the tears spill down her cheeks, a release of the hurt that had built up inside her. She had trusted Darius with her heart, and now that trust felt like a fragile glass, shattered beyond repair. Zara, please, Darius pleaded, reaching across the table to grasp her hand. Let's talk about this. We can work through it together. Zara pulled her hand away, feeling the sting of his touch. I need time to think, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. As she stood up from the table, Zara felt a sense of resolve building within her. She had spent years nurturing her garden, but now she needed to nurture herself and her own emotions. She couldn't keep living in the shadow of Darius's betrayal. I'll be in the garden, she said softly, before walking away, leaving Darius sitting alone at the table, his expression a mix of regret and desperation. Outside, the cool evening air brushed against her face, providing a momentary relief from the turmoil inside. Zara made her way to the garden, the place that had once brought her joy now serving as a sanctuary for her pain. She knelt in the soil, her fingers trembling as she touched the flowers she had lovingly nurtured. In that moment, she realized that she could no longer hide from the truth. The letters had unearthed a reality she couldn't ignore, and it was time to confront the choices that lay ahead. As she sat among the blooms, tears falling into the earth, Zara felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She would have to face Darius again, to confront the truth and decide what her future would hold. But for now, she allowed herself to grieve, the loss of trust, of innocence, and the life she thought she had built. The following day dawned heavy, with an oppressive silence that clung to the air in Zara Mitchell's home. It felt as if the sun itself was reluctant to rise, casting a dull light over the kitchen where she prepared breakfast. The smell of pancakes filled the space, but even the comforting aroma couldn't lift the weight of the confrontation with Darius from her mind. Zara moved mechanically, flipping the pancakes and pouring syrup into a small jug, her mind a whirlpool of thoughts. She could hear Darius moving around upstairs, the creaking of floorboards a reminder that he was still there, still present in a home that now felt foreign to her. In the back of her mind, Zara replayed their argument the night before, every word echoing like a haunting refrain. The children, Maya and Jordan, would be up soon, and she had to put on a brave face for them. They were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their family, and Zara desperately wanted to protect their innocence. As she set the table, she felt a familiar pang of guilt wash over her. Would this be the last time they all gathered for breakfast like this? "Mom, can we have chocolate chips in our pancakes?" Maya's voice broke through her reverie, bright and full of youthful enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetie. Just for you," Zara replied, forcing a smile as she opened the cupboard to grab the chocolate chips. As she prepared the pancakes, Zara's thoughts drifted back to the letters. The words of Celeste lingered in her mind, taunting her with their intimacy. How could Darius betray her like that? How could he choose someone else over the life they had built together? Maya and Jordan bounded into the kitchen, their laughter filling the air with warmth. Zara turned to greet them, her heart swelling with love as she watched them. They were the light in her life, a constant reminder of the bonds she had fought so hard to nurture. "Good morning, kiddos," Zara said, her voice brightening as she served up the pancakes. "Who's ready for a delicious breakfast?" Jordan, always the more adventurous eater, grinned. "I am. I'm going to add extra chocolate chips." "Me too," Maya chimed in, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she reached for the syrup. As they dug into their breakfast, Zara felt a flicker of normalcy. The laughter and chatter of her children wrapped around her like a protective blanket, warding off the darkness that threatened to engulf her. But even as she smiled and engaged in their playful banter, a part of her remained distant, her mind racing with the reality she had yet to fully confront. After breakfast, Zara sent the kids off to school, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she would have to face Darius again. The thought of another confrontation sent a shiver down her spine. She had always been the one to keep the peace, to smooth over the rough edges of conflict. But now, she felt like a soldier preparing for battle, her emotions raw and unfiltered. Once the house was quiet, Zara retreated to the garden, seeking solace among the flowers. She knelt beside the daisies, their bright yellow petals swaying gently in the breeze, and took a deep breath, inhaling the earthy scent of the soil. This was her sanctuary, her place of healing, and she needed it now more than ever. As she tended to the flowers, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She had to confront Darius again, but this time she would be prepared. She needed to demand answers, to understand the extent of the betrayal and what it meant for their future. Just as she was finishing up, Zara heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Darius stepped into the garden, his expression a mixture of apprehension and determination. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Zara stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands as she met his gaze. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she replied honestly, her heart pounding in her chest. Please, Zara. I know I messed up, but I need to explain. I need you to hear me out, he said, stepping closer. Zara hesitated, torn between the anger that still simmered within her and the love she had for the man standing before her. What is there to explain, Darius? The letters say it all. I know, he admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. But I need to tell you the context. I need you to understand what led to this. Go ahead, Zara said, crossing her arms defensively. She felt a mix of curiosity and dread at his words. Darius took a deep breath, and for the first time, she noticed the weariness etched into his features. We've been drifting apart for years, Zara. I didn't notice it at first, but between work and the kids, we stopped communicating. I felt like I was living with a roommate rather than a wife. I sought comfort in the wrong place, and I regret it more than you can imagine. Zara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. So you're saying it's my fault? That I pushed you away? No, that's not what I meant, Darius said quickly, his eyes widening in alarm. I take full responsibility for my actions. I was weak, and I let myself get swept away. But I want to fix this. I want to find a way back to you. Zara's heart softened momentarily at his words, but the pain of betrayal was still too fresh. What about Celeste? Was she just a temporary distraction for you? Darius hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. It was more than that, but it didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I was confused and lost. I didn't want to admit that our marriage was in trouble. Then why didn't you come to me? Zara asked, her voice shaking with emotion. Why didn't you talk to me before it got to this point? I thought I could handle it alone. I thought it would just blow over, he confessed, the regret evident in his voice. But it didn't, and I know I hurt you deeply. I'm so sorry, Zara. Zara felt a wave of conflicting emotions crash over her. She wanted to believe him, to trust that he could change, but the reality of his betrayal loomed large. You've shattered my trust, Darius. I don't know how to move past this. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back, he said earnestly, stepping closer. I'll go to counseling. I'll communicate better. I'll do anything you need. Just please, don't give up on us. Zara searched his eyes, looking for sincerity, for a glimmer of the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. But the pain of betrayal clouded her judgment, and she wasn't ready to let go of the hurt just yet. I need time to think, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Darius nodded, his expression heavy with understanding. I'll give you the space you need. Just know that I'm here, and I want to make things right. As he stepped back, Zara felt a mix of relief and sadness. She wanted to believe him, but the wound was still too raw. I'll be in the garden, she said, turning away from him, needing to reclaim her sanctuary. Zara knelt down among the flowers once more, allowing the tears to flow freely as she processed the conversation. The garden, her once vibrant refuge, now felt like a battleground, a place where love and betrayal clashed in a brutal dance. As she worked through her emotions, Zara's resolve began to solidify. She couldn't keep living in limbo, pretending that everything was okay when the foundation of their marriage had been shaken to its core. She had to make a decision, one that would ultimately shape her future. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zara sat on her porch, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the twilight sky. She could hear the distant sounds of laughter from the neighborhood, families enjoying their evening rituals. It felt so foreign to her now, a reminder of the normalcy she longed for but couldn't grasp. Zara picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. She had a choice to make. Should she reach out to Celeste? Should she confront the woman who had come between her and Darius? Or should she focus on healing herself first, on finding a way to reclaim her own identity outside of the marriage? As the night deepened, Zara felt a sense of clarity begin to form. She knew she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. It was time to confront not only Darius, but also the woman who had shattered her world. She needed to take control of her narrative, to decide what her future would look like, and that meant facing the pain head-on. With each passing moment, Zara felt her resolve strengthen. She would not allow Darius's mistakes to define her. She would fight for her happiness, for her children, and for the garden that had always been her sanctuary. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she would embrace the uncertainty and prepare herself for the battle ahead. The dawn of a new day arrived with a crispness in the air that felt invigorating. Zara Mitchell woke up with a sense of purpose burning in her chest. She had spent the previous night contemplating her next steps, and today, she was ready to take action. The weight of the letters still lingered in her mind, but she refused to let fear dictate her choices any longer. After sending the kids off to school, Zara took a moment to gather her thoughts. Today, she would confront Celeste, Darius's mistress. It was a decision that felt both empowering and terrifying, but she needed to understand the full picture and reclaim her own narrative. Zara dressed quickly, her mind racing as she mentally prepared for the confrontation. She felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and an unexpected surge of strength. She was no longer going to be the passive participant in her life. She was ready to take control. With a deep breath, she grabbed her keys and headed out to her car. The drive to Celeste's address, which she had found scribbled in one of the letters, felt surreal. Each turn of the wheel brought her closer to the woman who had invaded her life, and her heart raced with anticipation. When Zara arrived at the modest apartment complex, she parked and took a moment to collect herself. The building was unassuming, with faded paint and a cracked sidewalk. She felt a pang of vulnerability as she stood outside, wondering what she would say and how Celeste would react. Would the woman be remorseful, or would she be defensive? Zara approached the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She raised her hand to knock, hesitating for just a moment, but the thought of Darius, the betrayal, and the losses she had endured propelled her forward. She rapped her knuckles against the door, the sound echoing in the quiet of the afternoon. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Celeste standing there, her eyes widening in surprise. She wore a soft blue blouse that highlighted her striking features, but Zara's focus was solely on the woman's expression, a mixture of shock and recognition. "Zara," Celeste said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Zara felt a surge of anger rise within her. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice firm. "Can I come in?" Celeste hesitated before stepping aside, allowing Zara to enter the apartment. As Zara crossed the threshold, she felt an odd sense of intrusion. This was the space where Darius had sought comfort, where their lives had intertwined in a way that felt like a betrayal of all that she held dear. The apartment was small but tidy, with a few personal touches. a framed photo of Celeste smiling with friends, and a small potted plant on the windowsill. Zara was struck by how ordinary it felt, how it seemed to contrast sharply with the chaos swirling in her own heart. "Please have a seat," Celeste said, pointing to a modest couch. Zara remained standing, her posture rigid as she faced the woman who had come between her and Darius. "I don't want to sit," Zara replied, feeling her pulse quicken. "I want to understand why this happened, why you chose to be with my husband." Celeste's expression shifted from surprise to something more guarded. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It started as a friendship. I thought he was unhappy, and I was just trying to help him." "Help him?" Zara echoed, incredulous. "By having an affair? You knew he was married, Celeste. You knew he had a family." "I didn't plan for it to go this far," Celeste admitted, her eyes dropping to the floor. "I thought he was just venting about his life. I didn't realize that I was crossing a line until it was too late." Zara felt a mix of rage and pity wash over her. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've shattered my family. My children are going to be affected by this for the rest of their lives." "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Celeste said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, I truly am, but Darius, he was so charming, and I got caught up in it. It was never my intention to come between you." Zara shook her head in disbelief. "But you still made the choice. You could have walked away at any point. You didn't have to continue the relationship." "I know," Celeste replied, tears brimming in her eyes. "And I regret it every day. But please understand, I didn't take him from you. He was the one who chose to be with me." The truth of her words hit Zara hard. Darius had made the choice to betray her. He had crossed the line that separated their vows from infidelity. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but she couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. "Do you love him?" Zara asked, her voice steady as she looked Celeste in the eye. Celeste hesitated, her gaze darting away. "I don't know. I thought I did, but now I see how wrong I was. I just wanted to feel needed, to have someone care about me." Zara felt a wave of understanding wash over her. She wasn't here to absolve Celeste of her choices, but she could see how vulnerability had led to poor decisions on both their parts. "You need to understand that you're not the only one who feels lost. I loved Darius, too, and I thought he loved me back." "I'm sorry, Zara," Celeste said, her voice breaking. "I truly am." Zara took a deep breath, the weight of the conversation heavy in the air. "I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to tell you that this needs to end. Darius and I are trying to work things out, but you need to stay out of our lives." Celeste nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I will, I promise. I never wanted to be in this position. I just got caught up in something I didn't understand." Zara felt a mixture of relief and sadness. "I hope you can find a way to heal from this too," she said, surprising herself with her empathy. "We all deserve happiness, but it can't come at the expense of others." As Zara turned to leave, she felt a strange sense of closure. In confronting Celeste, she had also confronted her own fears and insecurities. The garden had been her refuge, but now she was reclaiming her life, taking back the power that Darius's betrayal had stolen from her. Once outside, Zara took a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs like a balm. She had faced the woman who had come between her and her husband, and although it hadn't been easy, she felt a sense of resolve wash over her. Now, she needed to confront Darius again, but this time with renewed clarity. Back at her home, Zara found Darius in the living room, pacing anxiously. His expression shifted from concern to relief when he saw her. "Zara, where did you go? I was worried." "I went to talk to Celeste," she said, her voice steady. "We need to talk." Darius's face paled, and he nodded slowly, bracing himself for whatever was to come. "Okay, I'm listening." Zara took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. "I told her that this needs to end. She understands the impact of her actions, and she promised to stay away." "Really?" Darius asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You're serious?" "Yes, and now we need to talk about us," Zara replied, her heart pounding. "I can't pretend that everything is okay, and I won't let this continue to fester." Darius nodded, the weight of her words settling over him. "I understand. I want to make this right, Zara. I'll do whatever it takes." Zara crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "You say that now, but words are just that. Words. I need to see action. I need to know that you're committed to rebuilding our marriage." "I will be," Darius promised, his eyes earnest. "I'll go to counseling, I'll communicate better, and I'll show you that I can be the husband you deserve." Zara felt a mix of hope and skepticism. "Counseling is a start, but it's going to take more than that. I need to see a change in you, Darius. I need you to take this seriously, for the sake of our family." "I will," he said, stepping closer. "I don't want to lose you or the kids. You mean everything to me." In that moment, Zara felt a flicker of the love they had shared, the bond that had once held them together. But she knew that love alone wouldn't fix the damage that had been done. It would take time, effort, and a willingness to confront their past. "Let's start by being honest with each other," Zara said, her voice steady. "No more secrets, no more lies. We have to face the truth." Darius nodded, his expression earnest. "I agree. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Just tell me how." Zara felt a sense of determination settle over her. She would take it one step at a time, confronting the challenges ahead with courage and resilience. "We can start by discussing our feelings and memories, what brought us here, and what we need to heal." The weeks that followed Zara Mitchell's confrontation with Darius and Celeste felt like a delicate balancing act. Zara was determined to rebuild her marriage, but every day was a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered her trust. The garden, once a sanctuary of peace, had become a battleground for her emotions, a place where she wrestled with love, anger, and the desire for healing. Darius had committed to counseling, and they had attended their first session together last week. The therapist had guided them through the initial stages of unpacking their feelings, but Zara felt an internal struggle. While she wanted to believe in the possibility of redemption, the wounds from Darius's betrayal still felt raw, and the thought of fully trusting him again made her stomach clench. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Zara returned home feeling emotionally drained. The kids were at their grandparents' house for the weekend, giving her some much-needed solitude. As she stepped into the garden, she was greeted by the familiar sights and scents that had once calmed her. The daisies and roses were in full bloom, vibrant against the backdrop of the evening sky. Zara knelt beside her beloved flowers, letting the cool earth ground her. She dug her fingers into the soil, feeling its warmth. Gardening had always been a source of therapy for her, a way to channel her emotions into nurturing life. But today, she felt a heaviness in her heart that lingered despite her efforts to cultivate positivity. Just then, Darius stepped outside, his expression cautious as he approached. "Hey," he said softly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Mind if I join you?" Zara looked up, forcing a smile. "Of course, just tending to the daisies." She gestured to the blooms, but her heart wasn't in it. The weight of their conversations hung between them, unspoken words and unresolved feelings swirling in the air. "I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed in therapy," Darius said, kneeling beside her. "About how I need to take responsibility for my actions. I know it's going to take time to rebuild your trust, but I want to show you that I can change." "Change doesn't happen overnight," Zara replied, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "It's going to take more than just promises, Darius. I need to see consistent effort. I need to know that you're willing to confront your choices and the impact they had on our family." Darius nodded, his gaze earnest. "I understand. I've started journaling to reflect on my feelings and what led me to make those choices. I want to be more open with you about my struggles, even the uncomfortable ones." Zara felt a flicker of hope at his words, but the memories of betrayal loomed large. "It's a start, but I also need to understand why you felt you couldn't talk to me, why you turned to someone else instead of reaching out to your own wife." Darius sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I was scared, Zara. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings, especially with everything else going on with the kids and work. I thought I could handle it alone, but I was wrong." Zara took a deep breath, feeling the tension between them. "You have to understand that I want to be here for you. I want to support you, but I can't do that if you're hiding your struggles from me." As they spoke, Zara's resolve began to strengthen. She had spent years nurturing the garden, but she also needed to nurture her own emotional health. The letters, the betrayal, and the struggles they faced as a couple had forced her to confront her own desires and needs. "Let's make a pact," Zara said, a newfound determination in her voice. "We'll commit to being open and honest with each other, no matter how difficult it is. We'll set aside time each week to talk about our feelings. No distractions, no interruptions." Darius's expression softened. "I'd like that. I think it could really help us reconnect and rebuild what we've lost." As they continued to talk, Zara felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but they were both willing to put in the effort to heal. The garden, once a symbol of her pain, began to transform into a space of renewal, a place where she could cultivate not only flowers, but also the love and trust that had been shaken. Later that week, Zara found herself in the garden again, digging up weeds that threatened to choke the blooming flowers. The rhythmic motion of pulling weeds and replanting seedlings became a meditative practice for her, allowing her to process her emotions and clear her mind. As she worked, she spotted a familiar figure approaching. It was Talia Rivers, her best friend and confidant. Talia's bright smile lit up the garden as she stepped onto the property, her presence a welcome distraction. "Hey, Zara, I brought you some fresh herbs from my garden," Talia said, holding up a small basket filled with basil, rosemary, and thyme. "I thought you could use them for dinner." "Thanks, Talia. That's so thoughtful of you," Zara replied, accepting the basket with a grateful smile. "Come join me. I could use some company." As they settled on a nearby bench, Zara recounted the recent developments in her relationship with Darius. "We've started going to counseling, and we're trying to communicate better," she said, her tone cautious. "But it's still a struggle." "I can't imagine how difficult that must be," Talia said, her voice filled with empathy. But you're strong, Zara. You've always been resilient, and I know you'll find a way through this. Zara nodded, feeling a sense of comfort in Talia's words. I just want to get back to a place of trust, but it's hard to forget what happened. The letters, they haunt me. Talia placed a comforting hand on Zara's shoulder. You're allowed to feel hurt. Healing takes time, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. Just remember, you're not alone in this. As they chatted, a thought crossed Zara's mind. What do you think about doing a small gathering next weekend? Just a few of our close friends. It could be a good distraction and a way to reconnect. I love that idea. We can make it a potluck. I'll bring dessert, Talia suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Zara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Planning the gathering would give her something to focus on, a way to bring joy back into her life. Let's do it. I'll handle the main dish, and we can decorate the garden for a cozy evening. As the days flew by, Zara and Talia worked together to prepare for the gathering. They spent hours in the garden, stringing lights and arranging flowers, transforming the space into a warm, inviting atmosphere. The laughter and camaraderie between them provided Zara with a much-needed respite from her worries. On the night of the gathering, the garden glowed with twinkling lights, and the air was filled with the delicious aroma of food. Friends began to arrive, bringing dishes to share, and filling the space with laughter and warmth. Zara greeted each guest with a smile, grateful for the sense of normalcy that enveloped her. As the evening unfolded, Zara found herself surrounded by friends, sharing stories and enjoying the moment. Darius had agreed to attend and seemed genuinely committed to being present, which gave her a sense of hope. Look at this place. You've turned your garden into a fairyland, Talia marveled, her eyes shining with delight as she admired the decorations. I couldn't have done it without you, Zara replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you for being here with me. Just then, Darius arrived, a plate of food in hand. He approached Zara with a tentative smile, and she felt a mixture of warmth and apprehension. Hey, I brought my famous barbecue chicken, he said, his tone light. Great, everyone's going to love it, Zara replied, trying to keep the atmosphere upbeat while still grappling with the complexities of their relationship. As the night progressed, Zara and Darius found themselves standing together by the fire pit, watching the flames dance. The warmth enveloped them, and for a moment, it felt as if they were back in their own world, disconnected from the pain of the past. Tonight feels good, Darius said, glancing at Zara. I'm really glad we're doing this. Zara nodded, her heart conflicted. It does feel good. I've missed this, just being together with friends and having fun. We can get back to that place, Darius said earnestly, his gaze steady. I know we can. I'm committed to doing the work. I want to be the husband you deserve. Zara felt a flicker of hope at his words, but the shadows of doubt still lurked in the corners of her mind. I want that too, Darius. But it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. I'm ready for the challenge, he assured her, the sincerity in his voice cutting through her reservations. As the evening wore on, laughter and conversation filled the air, but Zara found herself slipping away from the crowd, seeking a moment of solitude. She wandered back to her garden, catching her breath as she looked up at the stars twinkling overhead. The beauty of the night was a stark contrast to the turmoil she had been feeling, and she allowed herself to breathe deeply, grounding herself in the present moment. Just then, Zara felt a presence behind her, and turned to see Darius stepping into the garden, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. I was looking for you, he said softly. Are you okay? Zara nodded, though her heart was heavy with conflicting emotions. I just needed a moment to breathe. It's been a long night. I understand, Darius replied, taking a step closer. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us. I want to make sure we're on the same page moving forward. The sincerity in his voice struck a chord within Zara, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest. I want that too, but we need to be honest with each other. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I need to know that you're committed to this process, to us. I am, he said, his eyes earnest. I know I've made mistakes, and I'm ready to do the work to make things right, starting with being open and honest with you. Zara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over them. Then let's talk. Let's really talk about where we go from here. They sat together on a nearby bench, surrounded by the fragrant blooms of the garden. The atmosphere was a blend of tranquility and tension, but Zara felt a sense of clarity washing over her. She was ready to confront the past while forging a new path forward. Darius, she began, her voice steady. I need to know how you plan to regain my trust. What specific steps are you willing to take? Darius nodded, appreciating her directness. I've been thinking about that a lot. First, I want to continue going to counseling, not just for us as a couple, but also individually. I need to understand my own shortcomings better. Good, Zara replied, feeling a sense of relief. And what about communication? It's vital that we keep talking openly about our feelings, even when it's uncomfortable. I promise that I'll be transparent, Darius said, his voice firm. I'll share my feelings, my fears, everything. I don't want to hide anymore. I want you to feel secure in our relationship. Zara felt a wave of emotion swell within her. That's a good start, but I also need you to understand the impact your choices had on our family. It wasn't just me who was hurt. The kids, they deserve to know that we're working on this together. I know, and I'll do my best to reassure them that we're committed to each other and to them, Darius replied, his expression earnest. I want to show them that we can overcome this. The sincerity in his tone struck a chord with Zara, and she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. I appreciate that, but it's going to take time. I can't promise that I'll be able to forgive and forget immediately. I don't expect you to, he said softly. I just want to be given the chance to prove myself to you. As they sat together, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, and Zara felt a sense of calm wash over her. The garden, once a place of pain, had transformed into a symbol of hope and resilience, a space where she could cultivate not only flowers, but also the love and trust that had been shaken. In the weeks that followed, Zara and Darius put their pact into action. They attended counseling together and worked on their communication skills, often sitting in the garden to talk through their feelings. Zara found herself opening up, sharing her fears and insecurities, while Darius demonstrated his commitment through consistent effort and transparency. The healing process was not without its challenges. There were moments of frustration and pain, but with each conversation, they learned to navigate their emotions, slowly rebuilding the foundation of their marriage. The garden became a sanctuary for their growth, a space where they could both reflect and reconnect. Zara also took time for herself, rediscovering her own passions outside of her role as a wife and mother. She joined a local gardening club, where she met other women who shared her love for nurturing plants. The friendships she formed provided her with additional support and perspective, reminding her of the strength she possessed. One sunny afternoon, As Zara tended to her roses, she spotted the kids running toward her, their laughter echoing through the air. Maya and Jordan had returned from their grandparents' house, and their faces lit up with joy as they dashed into the garden. "Mom, look what we brought you," Maya exclaimed, holding up a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Those are beautiful." "Thank you, sweetheart," Zara said, her heart swelling with love. She knelt down to embrace them, feeling grateful for the simple joys of family. Darius joined them, wrapping an arm around Zara's shoulders as they admired the flowers together. "You know, I think this garden is going to be even more beautiful with all of us working together," he said, his voice filled with warmth. Zara looked at her family, a sense of hope blooming within her. They had weathered the storm, and while the path ahead would continue to require effort and commitment, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they were cultivating not only a garden, but also a stronger bond as a family. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the garden, Zara realized that healing was indeed possible. It wouldn't be a straight path, but with love, honesty, and determination, they could create a new chapter together. A few months later, as they gathered in the garden for a small family barbecue, Zara took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. The laughter of her children filled the air, and Darius stood beside her, a look of contentment on his face. "Here's to new beginnings," Zara said, raising her glass as they all gathered around the table. "To new beginnings," they echoed, a chorus of voices filled with hope and promise. Zara smiled, knowing that while the past would always be a part of them, the future held endless possibilities. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to nurture not only their garden, but also the love that bound them together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Zara felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had taken control of her narrative, and she was determined to cultivate a life filled with love, trust, and resilience. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.